See you. All right. So we're going to talk about mindfulness. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Just give me 1 minute, okay?
Sure, no problem.
Minute, yes.
Okay. See you. All right. So we're going to talk about mindfulness. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Just give me 1 minute, okay?
Sure, no problem.
Minute, yes.
Okay. See you. All right. So we're going to talk about mindfulness. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay, we're live now, by the way, but no one knows yet because we haven't put the link in the JAMINAR platform, so I'm going to do that now.
Okay, okay. Okay, great. So you're monitoring. You're going to monitor YouTube for Q&A, right?
No, I'm going to put the link that you monitor in a second.
Okay, try it. I'm going to take notes.
I'll put it in the Zoom chat.
Okay. We have a couple minutes. Mindfulness.
Oh my goodness. Boy, am I getting an error now? Starting in 1 minute. All right, so I think we're in business now. Starting in 1 minute.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're in business now.
Ready?
I just want to make sure it's caught up. Yes, we are ready. Continue.
Okay. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to JDTAN JAMINAR on this a little overcast but beautiful Sunday afternoon, April 11th. This afternoon, we have the pleasure of having a discussion about mindfulness. Our presenter this evening is Dr. Noel Gordon. Dr. Gordon attended Watttown Primary School, Homewood Technical High School, the Jamaica School of Agriculture, and the University of the West Indies before migrating to the United States. He holds a master's degree in human resources and organizational development, a master's degree in administration and supervision, and a doctoral degree in educational leadership. He has served as a New Jersey public school educator for over 23 years. For the past 14 years, he has served as a central administrator. In his capacity as a central administrator, Dr. Gordon functions as the district supervisor of student services. Dr. Gordon is also an educational consultant who is also the founder and CEO of Human Resources Initiatives Consulting Services, a human development speakers bureau that facilitates conferences, workshops, seminars, and motivational speeches. Here to share with us how mindfulness is beneficial for children, it is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Dr. Noel Gordon. Dr. Gordon, take it away, please.
Thank you so much, Carlene.
Leslie Ann.
Oh, Leslie, and I know you so well and now messing up, right?
No worries.
Almost every year in New York.
Right.
Greetings to everyone and thanking the JDTAN team for inviting me to be a part of this educational initiative. I'm so happy to be here. I'll be spending the next little while to indulge you. I crave your indulgence, and without any further ado, I will go right into the presentation. No, I need to tell you that I have a vested interest in education. I'm from a family of educators. My eldest brother is a graduate of Michael College. He was an educator. My eldest sister is a retired teacher, and my youngest sister is 4 years my senior. Some of you may know her, Mrs. Hyacinth Gordon Clark. She's a retired principal from Watttown School. She was a principal for about 14 years. So I have a vested interest in education. And I'd just like to just share my screen, and I'll go right into the presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, so today I'd like to talk to you about the merits of mindfulness, and I have an objective, or at least 3 objectives that I have lined up for us. First of all, is to provide an overview of mindfulness as a personal practice and a classroom methodology that aligns with such educational models as social and emotional learning. Also, to learn how to incorporate mindfulness practices into our routines, as well as how to implement them as part of an overall social emotional learning approach for both adults and students. So you'll find that the information that I'll be sharing with you today is not just confined to students. It's confined to the adults because we have to first focus on ourselves and make sure that we are in a very healthy mental, emotional position before we can impact our students. And also to highlight our interpersonal best practices for mental, physical, and spiritual renewal. So very quickly, we have a few norms. I still want to say them even though we're not interacting in a physical sense. So we want to invest in the process with, want you to invest in the process with your full attention. Voice and respond to concern positively and non-judgmentally, and we're going to be writing your responses. And I'm going to be addressing some of those later on. And this one is very key. Slow down to think, to reflect, and puzzle about things. And lastly, be open to the idea that the idea first and consider its possibilities. So in other words, we want to be objective, we want to be open. I know you're aware of these already, but we want to make sure that we embrace them, at least to think about them, to be reflective about them. In today's schools, students and teachers feel unprecedented or even alarming levels of stress. And I can relate to that. You know, how can we create calmer classrooms, a calmer environment in which students concentrate better and feel more positive about themselves? And how can we function in a goal today is to offer guidelines for practicing, demonstrating, and teaching mindfulness. And dozens of observations from teachers and students and researchers and practitioners provide striking evidence of the power of mindfulness and offer hope to anyone who wants to make the teaching and learning experience a more productive undertaking. I know that in our school district, we are at the embryonic stage of discovering how to implement mindfulness in our curriculum and into our daily activities with our students.
Dr. Gordon?
And, yes.
I'm going to interrupt you. A bunch of messages are coming through that folks are having some problems connecting. So we're just going to pause for a second and then we'll start back. Let me try and figure out what's going on.
Okay, alrighty, thank you.
All right, I just sent a message with the new link, and in a minute we'll get started again.
Well, we have to
And
start.
I'm going to ask you to do the intro again in a few minutes.
But we have to still. I'm not seeing myself anymore. What happened? What's happening?
No, I can still see you. Your screen is up, so that's why. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I'll let you know when the folks move over, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Am I starting with the introduction again?
Yeah, I think we should. A lot of people had a lot of problems. I just sent a new link out.
Oh, okay. All right.
And once they switch over, then I think just it may be repetitive, but not far enough. So we'll just do it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you drop it in the chat so that Carlin can have it, and if in case anybody has asked me for it?
Okay. Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, we are now 20 minutes after, a little bit of a late start today, some technical issues that are now resolved. Thanks everyone for your patience. So Leslie Ann and Dr. Gordon, if you would not mind kicking off again, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kimon. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining this special edition of JDTAN JAMINAR, where this evening we're going to have a conversation about mindfulness. Our presenter this evening is Dr. Noel Gordon. Dr. Gordon attended Watttown Primary School, Homewood Technical High School, the Jamaica School of Agriculture, and the University of the West Indies before migrating to the United States. He holds a master's degree in human resources and organizational development, a master's degree in administration and supervision, and a doctoral degree in educational leadership. He has served as a New Jersey public school educator for over 23 years, and for 14 of those years, he has served as a central administrator. In his capacity as an central administrator, Dr. Gordon functions as district supervisor of student services. Dr. Gordon is also an educational consultant who is also the founder and CEO of Human Resources Initiatives Consulting Services, a human development speakers bureau that facilitates conferences, workshops, seminars, and motivational speeches. To share with us this evening on how mindfulness is beneficial for children, please join me in welcoming Dr. Noel Gordon.
Thank you so very kindly, Leslie Ann. It's a pleasure seeing you again. We meet almost every year in New York.
In New York, for sure.
To connect with you again. And I'd like to thank the entire JDTAN team for inviting me to participate in this initiative. I just like to quickly say that I have a vested interest in education. I'm from a family of educators. My eldest was educated for many years. My eldest sister is a retired teacher. And my youngest sister, who some of you may know, Mrs. Hyacinth Gordon Clark, she is a recently retired principal from the Watttown School in St. Anne, where she served as principal for about 14 years. So I do have a vested interest. Without any further ado, I'd like to just go right into the presentation. Can you see my screen?
We sure can.
Okay, wonderful. So I'd like to speak to us today on mindfulness, the merits of mindfulness. And my objective today is, one, to provide an overview of mindfulness as both a personal practice and a classroom methodology that aligns with such educational models as social emotional learning. Second, learn how to incorporate mindfulness practices into our own routine, as well as how to implement them as part of an overall social emotional learning approach for both adults and children. So this is not just about the kids, it's about us also. And thirdly, highlighting of interpersonal best practices for mental, physical, and spiritual renewal. Now, I have just a few norms. I would use this if I was in a face-to-face context, but I still like to share these with you anyway. First of all, let us invest in the process with our full attention, voice and respond to concerns positively in non-judgmental manner. So when you type your responses in the chat, make sure you take that approach. Slow down to think, reflect, and puzzle about things. This is a new normal for all of us, so none of us really have it together. We're learning how to get it together. And be open to the idea first and consider its possibilities. So the three areas that I'd like to focus on, they are social emotional learning, mindfulness, and trauma-informed teaching and learning. And these are all interconnected because in schools today, students and teachers feel unprecedented, even alarming levels of stress. I can relate to that. Our school district is going to be reopening to our staff on Monday, tomorrow, and to students next week. How can we create calmer classrooms, a calmer environment in which we ourselves and also our students can concentrate better and feel more positive about themselves? What can we do to feel more positive about ourselves? So my goal today is to offer guidelines for practicing, demonstrating, and teaching mindfulness. Dozens of observations from teachers and students and researchers and practitioners provide striking evidence of the power of mindfulness and offer hope for anyone who wants to make teaching and learning experience a more positive undertaking. So we're all yearning for answers to the many questions. So I just like to say that an epidemic is facing us. It's in the educational system. It's not connected to the COVID-19 virus, but it's really has to do with the malady of stress. So the power of mindfulness and in that juncture. And our students, our teachers, our administrators, our parents, and our community are experiencing unprecedented levels of stress. Now, I want to kind of show you the relevancy of what I want to talk about today. I'll just show you just a little bit of, share with you a little bit of statistics. 1 in 10 preschoolers has had suicidal thoughts, and that's coming from Dixon Gordon. This as early as 2015, 1 in 10. Doctors are increasingly reporting children in early elementary school suffering from migraine headaches, from ulcers, and many physicians see a clear connection to pressure that's associated with school and the educational process. Roughly 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 10 boys in the US high school system try to harm themselves. And that is very, very alarming. And here's one more. By age 21, according to one longitudinal study, 82.5% of our students will have met the criteria for at least one psychiatric disorder. So this is very relevant, what we're talking about here today. In a recent survey by Active Minds, 80% of the 2,086 students surveyed reported that that COVID-19 has negatively impacted their mental health. So we're faced with lots of challenges, and because of that, we have to find ways of alleviating the stressful situations that we're dealing with. And I want you to understand that you're not alone. Sometimes when you find yourself in the corner, you think, my God, is everybody is going through this situation? I know when I speak with my niece in Jamaica, whichever of them, I have one at the college level and one at the high school level, and they are dealing with the same kinds of stress. It's just that some are dealing with older students and some are dealing with younger students. Hence, we're here to talk about social emotional learning. And this is a new buzzword that we're hearing, and I'm sure you've been hearing about social emotional learning in your neck of the wood. What is social emotional learning? Social emotional learning is a process for learning life skills, including how to deal with oneself. And that's important because not all of us know how to deal with ourselves. Our emotions take us all over the place sometimes. And how to deal with others and to build relationships and work in an effective manner. And in dealing with oneself, social emotional learning helps us in recognizing our emotions and learning how to manage those feelings. And you would be shocked to know that that is not an easy task, to manage our emotions, to manage our feelings. And what's the purpose for social emotional learning? Why are we talking about social emotional learning today? First of all, social emotional learning is a process through which individuals understand and manage their emotions, how to set and achieve positive goals, to feel and show empathy for others. And we talk about empathy and we throw this word around, but not everybody is able to demonstrate empathy towards others, putting yourself in the other person's shoe. And to establish and maintain positive relationships. There are many people who their relationships are always toxic, whether it's in the home or it's on the job or out there in the social setting. You just don't know how to maintain positive relationships. And also help. So social emotional learning is not something new. It's something that we are honing in on now because it's necessary for us to focus on things of this nature because of the mental concerns and the mental challenges that we are faced with. I don't know if you understand that after this COVID situation, we're going to have a whole lot of mental issues that we have to deal with. And as much as I am a learned person and mature adult, I had to find ways of maintaining my sanity. I before the winter hit us, and it was hard during the winter because you couldn't go to the gym, you couldn't go on the outside because of snow. I'm in the Northeast. But during the summer, I would be always on the street, or not on the street, on the park. I would go by the river. And I'd try to do things to help me to maintain my sanity. You're not alone in this mental turmoil that you're dealing with. So I want to talk about the case-cell definition for social and emotional learning competencies. I just want you to take a look at this little diagram here. And let me quickly mention, in the center, you have social emotional learning, and the competencies which we will address as we go along is self-awareness, becoming aware of who you really are, what's happening on the inside. self-management. How do I manage myself? Some people, they start drinking, they start smoking, they start doing all kinds of things during this pandemic era. How to make responsible decisions, relationship skills, social awareness. And if you notice, as this concentric circle, as you go out, once we're able to master these competencies, they impact the classroom, execute in the classroom. And then it impacts the culture and climate of the school. School-wide practices and policies now built around these values. And then it extends towards the home and the community, and then we form partnerships with the community, and we have a great, big, wonderful world. So what we're talking about, we're not talking about math, English, science. We're talking about how to interrelate, to deal with ourselves and to deal with others. So KSEL basically tells us that social and emotional learning enhances students' capacity to integrate skills, attitudes, and behaviors to deal effectively and ethically with daily tasks and challenges. And these are life skills that our children must receive. If they don't get these values and these skill sets, then they won't be able to become the adults and assume their civic responsibilities in a compelling manner. And like many similar framework, KSEL's integrated framework promotes intrapersonal, interpersonal, and cognitive competence. Cognitive competence, how we deal with our emotional intelligence, our minds, etc. There are 5 core competencies that can be taught, and I alluded to them a little earlier on when I mentioned the concentric circles. There are 5, and they are self-awareness. Who am I? You know, why am I responding to the stimulus that come my way the way I do? Am I able to manage my affairs? Am I able to interact with those around me in an amicable way? How are my relationship skills? Do I get along? Because if we don't glean these skills and hone these skills, we won't be able to pass them on to our students, and also to be able to make positive and responsible decisions. So I set a breakout session at this time. What I would normally do if I was in the other setting, I would say, okay, let's have a breakout session. Let us talk about this a little bit, but we're not going to be doing that. I want to do a little exercise here instead. So I'm going to come up with some thoughts, and I want you to respond to these thoughts as you reflect on what I said about social emotional learning, and I'm moving along briskly and succinctly so that we can get to the point where we can have some interaction. So read the thought. I'm going to be placing a few thoughts on the screen. I want you to read the thought related to social emotional learning and think about your reaction based on your work as an educator. So instead of you breaking out in groups and talking about it, I'd like for you to basically thought number 1, you're going to put number 1 and you're going to give your reaction. So let me go to the first one. Thought number 1, teachers want to include social and emotional learning in their classroom. Based on what I've shared with you about social emotional learning, I want you to put number 1 in the chat. And if you strongly agree, you say you strongly agree. If you disagree, if you're unsure, you put you're unsure. So the first one is teachers want to include social and emotional learning in their classrooms. And hopefully we can analyze these responses later on and we can use it to help us to drive decisions. So that's the first one. The second one is thought number 2. I can clearly define the purpose of social emotional learning and its connection to school climate, student growth, and the success of all learners. If you agree, strongly agree, for thought number 2, put thought number 2. Don't just write your response, but thought number 2. We want to know what you're responding to, and say how much you agree with that. I can clearly define the process. Not just based on what I just said to you earlier, but what you knew prior to me having this conversation with you. Number 3, thought number 3, My school has implemented strategies to infuse social emotional learning concepts. I'm adding concepts to that because you might not use the actual terminology, social emotional learning, but you might have incorporated the concepts. So my school has implemented strategies for infusing social emotional learning throughout and across the curriculum. Okay, so that's thought number 3. Man, we would be hustling, bustling if we're in a face-to-face environment and we're in our groups. Hopefully we'll be able to do this one day because we're able to get more out of it, all right? So let's move on. Thought number 4, social emotional learning programs and practices. So you're going to let me know, if you strongly agree, and be careful with this response because you want to be able to demonstrate to whomever or whoever might see this information that, hey, we are okay, or here we have a need. So I'm intentional when I'm doing this. So I do understand the research and competencies that are the foundation for implementing effective SEL programs and practices. Number 5, thought number 5. I can identify these programs to create next steps for strengthening SEL integration. So in other words, you can do an assessment of what is occurring in your learning environment, and you can use that to drive. If you're able to do that, then you say, yes, strongly agree. If you're unsure, you put you're unsure, etc. Okay, and we have one more thought before we get out from our breakout groups. The last one is thought number 6. Social emotional skills are essential skills for success in work and life. And tell me how you feel about that. So I was able to talk a little bit about social emotional learning, and this is going to give us a segue into the second focus area that I wanted to talk about today, and that is mindfulness. Mindfulness is related to social emotional learning, because if we don't acquire the social emotional learning skills, then we won't be able to adapt to our challenges and apply mindfulness in how we execute on a day-to-day basis. So fortunately, though, schools are beginning to respond to the epidemic of stress. One intervention that has received a great deal of attention is this mindfulness initiative. We've been talking about it in our school district. I've done professional development with the staff throughout the district on mindfulness, introducing them to the concept, and they're very responsive about it. So what is mindfulness anyway? What is mindfulness? Okay. Mindfulness is a way of learning to relate directly to whatever is happening in your life so that you can experience greater vitality, greater energy, greater vigor, and well-being in the present moment. In other words, get in touch with your feelings. Don't just try to avoid what you're feeling by watching the television or by getting on the phone and talking to somebody. Do that introspection, the introspective look, take a look. Be at one with yourself. That's what mindfulness is all about. Because if you're not, your emotions are going to dictate your responses. But we have got to learn how to really look into ourselves, learning to relate directly to whatever is happening on the inside. Mindfulness is a psychological process of purposefully bringing one's attention to experiences occurring in. We've got to stop being so hard on ourselves. Stop judging yourself. Some of us, we blame ourselves for something that happened 10 years ago. You made a wrong decision 10 years ago, and you're still suffering from the consequences because we refuse to forgive ourselves. We've got to get past that. Let's just think about our circumstances and stop judging without judgment. We develop this through the practice of prayer. Trust me, prayer that we do, those of us who are people of faith, prayer is a very potent tool, mindfulness tool the meditation, and also through the trainings, what I'm talking about here with you. And there are studies that have demonstrated the effectiveness of mindfulness practice in treating chronic pain. Believe it or not, there are instances where individuals have a friend who passed from a breast cancer just 2 years ago. And I learned so much from her. She was with I was kind of supporting their moral supporting her for 3 years. And she was at 4th stage cancer. And this woman, she lived every day to its fullest. She didn't know how long she had to live, but she lived every day to its fullest. And one of the things that she said to me, she said, listen, get in touch with yourself. Learn to get in touch with yourself. All these emotional issues that we are experiencing now, if we learn to get in touch with ourselves, you'd be shocked to know how we could get over some of these challenges even without taking the Prozac, etc. I want you to do something right now for me for a moment, just a little exercise in mindfulness. I want you to just close your eyes. And this is what she taught me. She's now gone. She's transitioned, but she taught me this. Just close your eyes and just think about any organ in your body or your heart. Think about your heart and just focus on your heart right now. When last have you really stopped and just think about your heart? You probably didn't even think about the beating of the heart. Think about your hand. Keep those eyes closed. Think about your hand. Get in touch with your hand. Think about your arm, your foot, your toes. And then she said to me, when you're having pain in your body or discomfort, what you need to do, get in touch with that pain. If you're feeling a headache, close your eyes and get to that spot. If you're feeling a pain in your stomach, get in touch with that pain in your stomach and talk to it, communicate with it. This sounds a little spooky, but I'm telling you, you can open your eyes now. Thank you. If you think about that and get in touch with yourself, let's become familiar with ourselves. Sometimes we're so unfamiliar with ourselves because we don't get in touch with ourselves and learn to control ourselves, then we won't be able to be effective practitioners. Now, these studies have shown that mindfulness has helped to cure high blood pressure, anxiety, depression. Let's not even talk about this depression because I don't care how strong you think you are, and fight ourselves not to go down with what's happening in our community. So you are not alone. So basically, mindfulness aligns well with the framework of social emotional learning. The social and emotional learning model case cell that I mentioned to you about, it lists the 5 competencies which I shared with you earlier, which we use to help us in the mindfulness initiative. Mindfulness is directly related, particularly to the first 2 competencies, self-awareness and self-management. Become aware of what causes you to feel the way you feel. Happiness is a choice, and happiness is a decision. You may wake up on the wrong side this morning and someone says something to you and you just get off on them. You wake up on another side, on the good side the next day, and it didn't even affect you. We should have more situations where we are disaffected by the impositions of life. So they are actually related. So as we become more and more aware of our thoughts and our feelings and our perceptions and sensations through mindfulness practices, we increase our own self-awareness. For real, that happens. Now, can you imagine if we're able to do this for ourselves and then we're able to transmit this to our students in the classroom setting where we can help to calm them down and help them to be reflective and think about their own actions and think about what they're feeling? So by using mindfulness strategies to cope with strong emotions, we will improve our self-management skills. And trust me, we can get some strong emotions these days. Have you ever been driving down the street and you're late for work and someone is in front of you and you're just honking that horn? That person is going about their business. They're not in any rush. Why are you getting on the person's case? But mindfulness, what about you just relax in the car and put some music on and just breathe in and out? Breathe in. Let me tell you, just breathing in. I'm not telling you something that you don't know. But I'm just trying to bring these things to the table. Here's what we're going to do right now of this moment. I have an exercise at the end, but I want to just share with you a natural resource that we all have at our disposal that we can resort to, that can avoid the migraine headache, that can avoid the stress. Just close your eyes again. And I want you to breathe in, take a deep breath, fill up your lungs as much as you can, and just hold it for a second and let it out. Let's do it. Let it out. One more time. In. Let it out. That's simple ABC. But trust me, if we spend more time on these little activities, then you'll be shocked to know how we can de-escalate. And we've got to learn to de-escalate. So let me just explain to you the benefits of mindfulness. One, mindfulness helps us to manage stress and anxiety. This one exercise that I just did with you, you would be shocked to know how much that can be effective in calming things down. You're with those students in the classroom setting, or you're doing online synchronous learning, and your students are all over the place, and some didn't show up, and then you get excited and upset about it. Why not just sit back for a minute, close your eyes, take a deep breath, let it out, and do it 5 times. It costs you nothing. Not a dime. It doesn't cost you $100. It doesn't cost you $1,000. It doesn't cost you a trip to the doctor. You would be shocked to know how this natural resource can help us. So another benefit of mindfulness, it strengthens your cognitive health and your attention. It strengthens your mental health. It's ours. You think you're strong. That's strong. We're not that strong. Our mental constitution is not as strong as we think it is. If we allow it to take on its own life, it will lead us to places where we never thought we could go. And let's move on. Benefits of mindfulness. It helps us to model compassion and kindness. So here it comes now. As a teacher in a classroom setting, you can be calm, cool, calculated. You don't respond in a negative way to your stimulus, and you can demonstrate it for your student. I still remember my high school English teacher, one of my high school English teachers, her name was Miss Anderson. You know what I remember most about Miss Anderson? You could never ruffle her feather. It doesn't matter what was going on around you, she would always keep her cool. Miss Anderson, I still remember her, and she's still alive. Okay, it helps us to cultivate awareness and balance, and it helps us to foster empathy and connection. And lastly, it helps us to grow in resilience. So that is just a touch on mindfulness. You become aware of yourself, and you don't allow the past to impact the present. One of the things that I don't do a lot, I don't watch the television a lot. I don't watch the news a lot at all. And then there were people who would send me all kinds of news about COVID, Corona, and what's happening in the world. And I had to confront individuals, and I said, listen, don't send me any of this stuff. Don't send me any more of this. You might think you want to give all the people all the information, but I don't want to start my day under duress. And you have to guard your mental space. You have to guard your emotional space. And when you're able to do that, then you're able to transmit that to your children. So as I move on, and time is going, but I'm moving on, I want to touch a little bit on trauma and trauma-informed instruction. And when I learned about, and it brought me back to a situation, when I was a teacher in Patterson School District, I had a bad experience with a student. Actually, two bad experiences I'll share very quickly. You see this person with the hand is stretching out for help. I remember the student, I was co-teaching in a special education class, and this student was very disruptive every day. And I used to get on his case. I used to call security. I would do all kinds of stuff. And somebody, the main teacher called one day, she said, Mr. Gordon, he's not able to read. And when I discovered that the student was not able to read, my empathy, my compassion towards him elevated, and I started treating this student differently. And we developed a wonderful relationship, and he stopped giving problems in the class because he was dealing with, that's for him is trauma. You're in a class with everybody else, you can't read. And there was another student, he did his work, and when he gave it to me, I was so hard on him, I marked it up, and he crushed up the paper and threw it in the garbage. And I asked him, why did you do that? And he basically said to me, I put my effort in and you didn't treat it with respect. And I learned from that student. And, we have to learn to kind of understand where they're coming from. Maybe that student put so much effort into what he was doing, and he was probably undergoing duress. Now, having said that, trauma is a psychological and physiological, it's both mental and physical response to any deeply upsetting or threatening situation. And these situations can range from COVID-related trauma to family dysfunctions, to child abuse or neglect, to serious car wreck. Okay, so that's what defines trauma. So ongoing adversity such as discrimination, bullying, poverty, community violence. If you're from a community where there's always violence, I remember years ago when I lived in Jamaica, I've been living in the States over 30 years now, but I remember I was held up at gunpoint in my home in Greendale, Spanish Town. And for the rest of my years in Jamaica, I was undergoing post-traumatic stress disorder. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would go to the window. I would look what's happening on the outside. When I got in at night, I would get out of the car, would turn around, walk around the car, put my hand at my side as if I had a gun. Experience that I have had. So can you imagine if you've experienced violence or trauma, or your students have experienced it, whether it's in domestic violence or child abuse or emotional abuse, whatever case might be, and they bring that to the classroom. Can you imagine what you have to deal with? So we have to understand trauma-informed approach to social emotional learning. A trauma-informed approach to social emotional learning requires partnership with community resources that are equipped with certain vital skills. So, and communicate with the pastor. And you see churches, and I'm going to say this, you see a lot of people, because the church is closed down and they can't go into a building, then they think that the church is just the building, and they're creating havoc and blaming people. Listen, it is the relationships, it's the interpersonal relationships. As spiritual leaders, you have to partnership with the school where you can find a bridge to assist the families, reach out to the challenges that we are faced with. Years ago, when I was in high school, I don't know if he's still alive or he still has that organization. I think his name was Father Hulang in Jamaica. And he used to have these charity events, and we used to see students and children who had all kinds of challenging circumstances, and he would create a safe haven for them to help out the school and to help out the home. We have to start partnership, and we have to seek partnership with our community, our schools. If you're an administrator, start reaching out to the community, start reaching out to the hotels, start reaching out to whomever you can to see if you can get assistance to help you with students who are dealing with these traumatic situations. So if we're going to take that response to education, a trauma response approach to education, we're going to have to make sure that we have an understanding of how trauma impacts teaching and learning. I had to put this point in there when I was doing my preparation. I'm just going to read it. It says the brain is incredibly malleable, and research informs us that positive reciprocal behaviors can be explicitly taught and encouraged. Now we're talking about curriculum here now. We're talking about curriculum. I'm working on this whole curriculum infusion of mindfulness and social emotional learning into the curriculum, because it's not separate apart. It's something that we have to infuse. It's a daily situation. So we can embed serve and return. I'll explain a little bit. Serve and return practice into content area learning. Serve and return, language instruction, extracurricular activities, and structured play. All of this is what we can, positive vibes, instead of allowing the student to get on our nerves. I'm not trying to be judgmental here now, that we give out positive vibes. I remember when I just started teaching, I was in the classroom and the first thing I would write on the board, here are the rules. The first thing I wrote were the rules. Don't, because the students will become defensive. Build a relationship with those students. Sometimes it's hard, we reciprocate sometimes, not all the time. But if we're intentional in doing this, the mindfulness activity, they will be responsive. So we can also, and we should seek to do that. I hope that this initiative can be adopted in the Jamaican school system. If it's not, it started. I hope it started. I don't know. That we can embed this serve and return practice into content area. And the school where I currently serve and my office is located there, every morning, even though they're doing online learning, the principal would go on and she would have an exercise in mindfulness and communicate with the students, and it lasted for about 5 minutes, and it set the tone for the rest of the day. And this is something that we really have to try to do to assist our students. Now, trauma-informed approach to educational leadership, and this is for our administrators now. Trauma-informed leadership builds positive relationships among members of the professional learning community. And these relationships are even more important for those who are experiencing trauma. So I've been an administrator in different capacities, and I do understand that, we have to have the lesson plans, we have to make sure that, we do the observations, etc. But in these trying times that we're in, there's a scripture that says, the letter kill it, but the spirit giveth life. We have to sort of go a little easy. I'm not saying you're compromising your standards. We have to set the tone and create that learning environment that's conducive to positive interpersonal relationships. These relationships are very important, especially now that we are living in these times. Climate and culture is everything right now. Yes, the academics is important, but believe you me, we don't know that our students, and we've said it here, we know in the American schools, is that the learning is not exactly what it's supposed to be. God help us, what the students have learned over the last year. We try, but trust me, we know it's not the same as sitting in the classroom. So instead of beating people on their heads, make sure the students get the A, get the B. Why not kind of take a mindfulness approach and see how we can help these students, how we can better help them to navigate the rugged terrains that they're dealing with, sometimes on the home front. So how can educational leadership or influencers, you're the teacher, help traumatize people? I'm moving, I have to get through this part within an hour. Now, first of all, you recognize that people are going into survival mode and respond in kind and compassionate ways. Hear me. Principals, administrator, people are in survival mode. Respond. This is a mindfulness piece. Respond in a kind and compassionate way. And teachers, if your colleague walked past you and didn't say hi, maybe they didn't even realize you were there. Let's go easy with one another. Cut a slack. Give your colleague a slack. Cut your student transitions. Praise publicly and criticize privately. Praise publicly, criticize privately. Orient your learning community to adapt to a mindfulness mentality. Let's create a community where we can support one another And then the last one of that one, take care of yourself. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a little while. Take care of yourself. Listen, when you're on the plane, they said if there's an oxygen problem, you put on the mask first before you put the mask on your child. You come first. And I'm just going to give you a little plug here. I'm doing some writing and it's supposed to be publishing in a few months from now. And that's the entire book is about that. You come first. You got to take care of yourself. Stop taking care of everybody else and leave yourself, because chances are the people who you help the most care the least about you anyway. And that's not going to change your impression of you. So you've got to become selfish and take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to help others. This lady told me that she was from the country in St. Mary, and she said when she was a child, this lady had about 8 children, and every Friday evening she would leave her home, she would go to the restaurant, she would sit by herself, and she would eat a meal. And they used to say, she's such a mean person. But she said she reflect now and realized that this woman was a very smart woman. She took a moment for herself. You've got to take the time out for yourself. You notice I'm not talking about math, English, science, social studies. I'm talking to you about how you can take care of yourself. And that's what it's all about. So what I would have done now is to do a turn and talk. But we can't go turn and talk now because we are in social media. So the question is, what is social emotional learning, and why is social emotional learning important in education? Take a minute and just write a thought. Respond to that in the chat for me. What is social emotional learning? What you've grasped on what you knew earlier, and why is why is social emotional learning important in the education? Important in education. Why is it important? Okay, you do that on your own terms. I need to get through these few pages, and I want to get through them so we can have the interaction, respond to some of your questions. So let me get to some practical things here now. That was sort of the foundation. Question, parents or child care provider, we want to take a look at your well-being. Mindfulness, we are concerned, Jamaican educators, you gotta take care of your well-being. Got to take care of the high blood pressure, got to take care of the diabetes situation. Many of these are reactions to the way we relate to our situation. It's not just the children who need guidance. The adults need guidance too. We need guidance. Parents and child care providers should ensure that they're looking after their own well-being. And here are some of the best practices that you can encourage your parents, and even you as yourself should take note of. And these are simple things which you know, but I'm just reinforcing them. Share your worries and seek out support from friends, family, and peers. Don't just keep it in your head and deal with your problems all by yourself. Style by eating well, exercising, having fun, and getting enough sleep. Listen, eat well. Listen, instead of eating the rice and the dumpling, which is staple in Jamaica, yellow yam. Do you know that yellow yam, any of those products with color in it is healthy? So this yellow yam, which you think was poor people food, listen, yellow yam is a good thing to eat. You see, saltfish, when I was a boy, saltfish was for poor people, but saltfish is loaded with your proteins, and you could cut back on the salt pork. People don't eat that again. That people still do that stuff in Jamaica. I don't know, but you eat right. I know sometimes it's very challenging to get the kind of foods that you need, but you have to improvise, turn your hand, make fashion. Exercising. Do your little exercise. I'm not able to go to the gym now, but you know what? I do my push-ups. I'm not a kid, I'm not young, I'm grown. I do my exercise. I go out, I walk 5, 6, 7, 8 miles. I go out as often as I can. You got to move. We've got to move our body. You've got to exercise. You want to age gracefully? exercise. You want to look good going to your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, exercise. Let me tell you, that's also free. All right? So that's what we have to do, exercise. Okay? Stay well informed by finding out more about the topics that concern you. Stay informed. Listen, every time someone sends something to you about the COVID vaccine, about Moderna, about the one from India, about Pfizer, and about conspiracy, put it in Google and then you do fact check. Fact check. Don't just buy into these things. Make sure that you're well informed, because many of these things that you hear about are not for real. Never stop talking and listening to your child or to your student through good times and through bad times. Always listen. We get down there. Always listen. You and your child, make sure that they know that you love them and that you are proud of them. You know, I have 2 children. I love them dearly. And my daughter and I, we traveled when she was younger. Then my son came every year. We went away for at least a week on the father-son vacation. One day my son said to me, "Daddy, do you love me?" Now he was a teenager. I was about 15, 16. Said, "Daddy, do you love me?" "Yeah, I love you all the time." He said, "Daddy, you don't tell me enough." You know what that did to me? These children of yours, you got to tell them, you got to reaffirm, you got to reassure them that you love them. No, I thought I had a great relationship with my son, and he was second guessing me because I didn't tell him enough. Your students, let them know that you love. You may become frustrated. I remember one man told me one time he wanted my seat on the bus, and I said, no. He said, "You're not going to come to anything in life." He told me that I was a boy when he told me, and now to me was a little boy because I didn't give him my window seat. So you better be careful what you say to students. They remember you for the rest of your life. You don't want them to remember you in that negative way. Be honest about your feeling. If you're upset, you're upset. I apologize to my children, to my students all the time. You know, it's okay. We're human beings. Be clear about what is and what isn't acceptable. Set your standards. Set standards and hold on to your standards. And own your own role. You are the parent or you're the teacher, so don't take that decision. Let's move on. We're getting there. Helping your child. You know, worrying or difficult behavior might be short-lived, so give it some time. Your children are going to be off the chains. Your students are going to acting crazy. Cut them a slack. You know, work with them. Tomorrow, they're going to come back and they're going to be in a better mood. Just work around them. You remain constant. Talk to these children. I remember Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson was my fourth form math teacher at Homewood. I don't remember the Pythagoras theorem and all those things that he taught me, but I remember those. He would shut down the math class sometimes and would just talk about life. You get me? Sometimes you got to shut it down and just talk to your students about life. We talk about, you know, with older children, they may not warm up to you as easily, but still work with them and ask your child what they think would help. Don't impose upon them. And if you can, talk to your child or the parent. And one of the worst things we do now, don't get into that conflict situation. The father said one thing, the mother say one thing. You talk about it behind the child's back. They don't need that conflict right now. Keep your conflicts away from your children, please. And teachers, you know, we have to make sure that when we go into the classroom that we just focus. It's hard to do sometimes because life is so hard, but just try to just blot out what's happening on the outside and just focus on your children. So top mindfulness tips to support children and young people. Very quickly, be there to listen. Listen more than you talk, okay? Stay involved in their lives. Take what they say seriously. One day, my son said, I have to use the example, said to my wife, listen, I'm leaving home. He was about 5 or 6. I'm leaving home. I'm not staying here anymore. And mom said, there's a door. Go, you want to go? You know what my son did? He opened the door and started out down the road, this little boy, and I was like, behind. He went all the way down the block, and then he heard what your children are saying. If they take whatever they say seriously. If someone says, I feel like killing myself, don't say, how you want to kill it? Go jump off a rock. No, they could be serious. Don't do that. And build positive routines. And next, we're coming down to the finale. Look after yourself, please. If your child is having problems, and these are some of the parents or grandparents and yourself, don't blame yourself. You've done your best. If things are getting you down, it's important to recognize this. Friends and family can often help. In COVID, you have to be careful. You know, I wouldn't take this recommendation right now. Keep your children home because they'll bring back COVID and give it to you. It's easy to say, you know, take some time for yourself, but it's very difficult, but you've got to find a way. And the last thing I want to say on that is that make sure that you go to your doctor and do a checkup. Go to your doctor and do a checkup. You know, let them check to see. Many people just go for a regular checkup and they realize that something is wrong. Nothing is wrong. Go see a psychologist, go see a counselor. Take care of your mental health. I want to do an exercise before we open for question, but I just want to say it's very important for us to take care of ourselves. There are 4 dimensions to life. And then I want to do a closing exercise with us, and then we take some questions. There are 4 dimensions to life. The body, your human entity, this physical body. Then you have the mental or emotional component. The second component is the mental or emotional component. And the third component is the spiritual component. Whoever you conceive God to be, I'm a person of faith, but if you understand that going to church doesn't make you a person of faith, because some people go to church, but they don't have any value, and they're really, you know, you ever see a person who go to church every Sunday, but they're miserable? You know, you know this story about the donkey, the kid saw the donkey and said, why, oh, this donkey's mouth is so long. And then the child saw this lady and said, there's another donkey, because her mouth was to a mosque or a synagogue. Doesn't mean that you follow the principle. It's more than that. So being spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that you get up every Sunday, you go into a religious house of worship. It means the values that you carry, the empathy, the interpersonal relationships, the loving your neighbor as yourself, being spiritual and not ready to hurt others. So try to be a spiritual person. Take it easy, you know. You want to make sure that you focus on these things and mindfulness. And when you have these qualities, you can pass them on to your students. So that's spiritual. And then the last component is social. So you have the physical, you have the mental, you have the spiritual, and then you have the social component. You've got to do something for yourself. You've got to take time for yourself. Build your social life. For a long time, I didn't build my social life. This is mindfulness now. For a long time, I was taking care of everybody else, and I wasn't minding my own social life. I didn't even know for years, I didn't go down to New York, go hang out by, you know, go watch some jazz or just go walk the streets or do something like that. It's a beautiful place. New York is nice to hang out. It took me years before I learned to appreciate the city. And let me tell you, the only thing that's preventing me from going there now is COVID, because I'm always there now. Taking care of myself. You've got to take care of yourself. Please understand. As a teacher, as an administrator, as an educator, as a parent, you've got to learn to take care of yourself. And that comes through mindfulness practices. Yes, I didn't talk about English, math, science, social studies. I talked to you about things which you might already are fully aware of. But I just want to bring it to the fore for you to understand that you need to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, you run yourself to a wreck. I give the story all the time about the the woman who took care of everybody else, and her husband treated him well. She died. She rose again. This is just a story. And when she go home and when she saw who was lying in her bed, in her king side bed beside her husband, she got a heart attack and died a second time. Can I say to you, listen me, you got to take care of yourself, because all that you work for, somebody who you wouldn't even talk to, moving on your husband because you're dead, or moving on your wife because you're dead. I know a man one time from the country. Listen, when this woman, her husband died, and if you ever see who this woman pick up as a new boyfriend, you would be shocked. So I'm saying to you, it sounds jovial, but you better take care of yourself. If I was in church, I would say, somebody give me an amen. So what I'm going to do with closing of this section, so that I can finish by in the 1 hour, so we can spend the next hour having conversations. I'm going to be sharing. No, I think I need to go back to that, and then I will I'll share with you what I'm planning on doing, and then I'll put on the music. So what I want to do here at this point in time is an exercise I'd like to engage. This is my final exercise, and then I'm going to be getting out of your way. It's called Mindfulness Meditations. And you see my little mindfulness chart exercise with us. It's called the mindfulness practice. So I want you to really work with me. We're going to ask you to tune into your body and focus on good feelings and make physical contact and with yourself, touch, physical contact. Imagine someone who it gives you comfort, connect with nature. So I'm going to take you through this exercise, but I'm going to play some music, and I'm going to ask you to follow me through this as my closing exercise before we take some questions. Just bear with me. I want to make sure that I'm on the right. Okay. All right, I think I have it now. So I'm going to be sharing again. Is it this one? Okay. Leslie, can we see that blank screen there, right?
I'm seeing a blank screen right now. Yes.
That's exactly what you're supposed to see. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to take you through this exercise. You can look at the visual, or as well as if you don't look at the visual, you can close your eyes. But I'd like for you to just take a look at the visual. I'm going to take you through this mindfulness exercise. We got to do these things more often. So just breathe out. Before we do that, I want you all to relax, because I was just talking. So let's take a deep breath and just hold it for a minute. Everybody, breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in again. Breathe out. Just one more time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Now take a look at your screen. I want you to get in tune with your body. Take a few deep breaths into your belly. Follow me now. Focus on what I'm saying you to do. Take a few deep breaths into your belly and focus your attention on the feeling of your feet grounded on the floor. Put your feet flat on the floor. Or the chair, the attention to the physical feeling of being supported. Pay attention to that feeling. Notice all the places your body is touching. The floor, the chair, and how you are being. You might even imagine the whole planet is under your feet, holding you up. Take another few deep breaths before you move on. Let's breathe in and out a few times. Go ahead. Okay. Next, we want to focus on good feelings. When you're in a moment of feeling connected to your family or have a special interaction with a child you work with, pay close attention to how that feels in your body. So think about someone who you likes and cares for. Think about how it feels in your body now. Notice where in your body you feel contentment, gratitude, and love. Just try and focus on where in your body. Think about it. Take a moment to savor and appreciate those feelings. Take a moment, non-judgmental, focus on those feelings. Say to yourself, this is what well-being feels like. This is what well-being self. Make physical contact, hugging yourself. I know it sounds crazy, but hug yourself. Go ahead and do it. You haven't been hugged for a long time by anybody because of COVID. Hug yourself. Come on, some of you are not hugging yourself. I'm not saying it, but just hug yourself. Settle in and present, and be present with the physical experience of touch and comfort. You can just rock with the music. Notice if any areas of your body is relaxed, and see which areas are relaxed at this moment, especially during this time when we may be physically distant from other people. Long hugs and tuning into a touch doesn't occur, but hugging yourself can be calming, soothing, and can generate feelings of warmth and love. Tell yourself that I love you. Say I love you to yourself. I love you. Tell that inner person, I love you. And imagine someone who gives you comfort. Think of someone who gives you comfort now. Think of a family member, a teacher, a mentor, a child, a friend. Imagine they are right there with you, offering a warm smile, sending you wishes for well-being. Feel that person's presence. Come on, feel that person's presence. Their care and love for you. Spend a little while with that feeling of comfort and mindfulness. And this is connect with nature. Take time to walk outside now. I want you to open your eyes and imagine you are in this place, this view that you're seeing. Imagine you are there. Take time for a walk outside. Digging in the soil and taking some pictures. Pay close attention to the sounds. Explore and see if you can find something you have never noticed before. Take a look at the mountain ridge. The smell of air, many different shades of green as you walk through the park, as you see the view, the sunset. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the essence of mindfulness. Let's take care of ourselves. The merits of mindfulness. The merits of mindfulness. Thank you so much for indulging me. I hope that you have gleaned something. Are you there?
Oh, yes.
We're there, right? Okay, we hope you have gleaned something from what I shared with you, and you can take something back into the classroom or into your own life or into the life of your family. Thank you so very much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. You know, I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this, but it was, as they say, then and some. Thank you so very much for this. I know that Carleen Largy, who is part of our JDETF, she's our Director of Communications and part of our technical team. She has been monitoring the YouTube chat. So I think she has some comments and perhaps a question or two to share with you. So Carleen?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay, I have to go back to my YouTube screen. Dr. Gordon,
Yes, ma'am.
they were listening.
Good.
They were listening. Let me start with some comments and I'll end with what I think is absolutely fabulous. Okay, now I have to go to my full screen and I go to the chat. Okay, some of the comments, there were several comments. Eugenia Patterson has a question. Will the session be available